Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out this monoblack aggro sacrifice deck that's trying to get the most out of Twilight Diviner from Lorwyn Eclipsed. A 3-mana 3/3, when it enters we get to surveil 2, and then whenever one or more other creatures we control enter, if they entered or were cast from a graveyard, we get to make a token that's a copy of one of them. This ability only triggers once each turn. So the Diviner is a way to initially fill the graveyard, give us a bit of card selection, and then we've got 10 creatures in this build that we can easily get back from the graveyard and get an additional copy. At 1 mana there's the full set of Forsaken Miner, a 2/2 skeleton that cannot block, and whenever we commit a crime we can pay a black mana to return it from our graveyard to the battlefield. So that's one way we can maybe pay a black with a Diviner in play and now get 2 Forsaken Miners. Then there's also Bloodghast, which we're obviously hoping to discard or surveil into the graveyard instead of having to cast it first, and then now simply with a landfall we can get it back out of the graveyard and with a Diviner get an extra copy. And then there's a Timeline Color, which we can just cast as a 2-mana 2/2 with haste, which is pretty decent for an aggro deck, and we can also warp it out of the graveyard at the cost of 2 life, and then it will enter and end of turn go back to the warp zone where we can once again cast it for 2 mana, and that's another excellent card to maybe copy with our Twilight Diviner if it happened to be in the graveyard. And to help us put our own creatures in the graveyard, we're also running the full set of Sephiroth, which can sacrifice a creature when it enters or attacks, and then we get to draw a card, and whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and we gain 1 life, so we can drain the opponent while sacrificing our creatures or taking out opposing creatures. And the ability from Sephiroth also counts as committing a crime, since we're targeting our opponent with it, so that's another way to easily get back our Forsaken Miner, and then we can just pay a black, get it back, and maybe once again sacrifice it to Sephiroth, so we can keep sacrificing that same creature over and over while attacking and drawing extra cards, so that's another very powerful synergy. And there's also a chance we can transform Sephiroth if enough creatures died. And then rounding out the deck, we're also playing the full set of Snarling Gorehound, 1/1 with Menace, saying when a creature we control with power 2 or less enters, we get to surveil 1. So that's an excellent way to find some of our recursive creatures that we can then get back out of the graveyard. And it is also an excellent way to grow Moonshadow, which starts out as a 1/1 with Menace, but whenever 1 or more permanent cards are put into our graveyard from anywhere, while it has a -1 counter on it, we get to remove a -1 counter. So it will eventually grow into a 7/7 if we give it enough time. And of course with all these cheap 1 and 2 powered creatures, we'll have no trouble enabling the Gorehound, especially if we then also get an additional copy from our Twilight Diviner. So those are all the creatures. Then we also have a bunch of removal to make sure we don't get run over by any Badger Mole Cubs that see a ton of play these days. At 1 mana there's a Requiting Hex as an instant speed removal spell for any 1 or 2 mana creatures. Can also blight onto our own creature if we want to gain 2 life. And then Tragic Trajectory also has a bit of synergy in a sacrifice deck, and especially in a deck that's also running the Timeline Color, as we can maybe warp it to take out something larger. And then Bitter Triumph as instant speed removal that can take care of creatures and planeswalkers alike. Can also discard a card as an additional cost to cast a Bitter Triumph as opposed to paying 3 life, which is great as a way to discard a Timeline Color or Bloodghast and then cheaply get them back out of the graveyard while maybe enabling the Twilight Diviner. And then another 3-drop we could consider in this deck is Corpses of the Lost, which has additional skeleton synergy, but for now I'm trying to maximize the synergies with Twilight Diviner, so we get to see that in action, but that's certainly another great card you could consider in the archetype. And then a mana base also gets to free roll a few Realms of Ko for those grindy matchups where we have time to make a few additional spirit tokens, which can maybe get the game over with or can serve as additional sacrifice fodder for Sephiroth, but don't want to go overboard since a hand with 2 of those means we don't get to curve out perfectly, and our deck does have a lot of 1-drops we can cast early on. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We have a keepable hand. Can maybe start with a Gorehound and then play Moonshadow on 2, which would maybe immediately grow the Moonshadow as well. Or we can go for a hasty Timeline Color and then sacrifice it to Sephiroth next turn, which I also don't mind. Although I guess we could do both, just Moonshadow and then Warp. Although then of course Color will not be in play for Sephiroth. At least our Moonshadow is getting nice and large. Alright, opponent on Elementals with Ashling. And another Moonshadow. So, yeah, now I like Moonshadow into color once again. That's why Gorehound is such an amazing card alongside Moonshadow. Now milling this is not going to grow Moonshadow since it's not a permanent, so I guess we'll keep that one on top. And then hit for 5. Opponent could maybe tap out for a Roaming Throne. The main card we're worried about is Thunderflock bouncing all our stuff, although Moonshadow is an elemental actually, so that does help. They could cast a 5-drop, it's going to be Deceit to bounce Moonshadow. And another Ashling. So can replay Moonshadow, cast Bitter Triumph. Or we can go for Sephiroth. Yeah, I'm kind of liking Moonshadow Bitter Triumph. Discarding Sephiroth will still help grow them. A minor we actively want in the graveyard. So, is there any point in casting Bitter Triumph after blockers? I don't think so. And then I do want to take out the transformed Ashling, so they have to pay the blue mana to transform the red one. Their opponent takes 5. And yeah, opponent scoops it up. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a functional hand, the Gorehound plus Moonshadow combo, minor great with Sephiroth. So we've got a lot of different little synergies. Turn 1, I think Gorehound has the highest upside. And then both Moonshadow and Minor can trigger it. Do not have any removal spells, which we may need, especially against any Badger Mole decks. But we do have 12 spot removal spells that we can maybe surveil into. Blue-black, alright. Stick to the plane. Trajectory sadly doesn't grow Moonshadow, but I don't think I need to keep the sorcery. And color I'm happy to put in the graveyard. Harvester takes out Moonshadow, so this is likely the Doomsday combo deck. So they'll have a sweeper at 5 mana, which can also exile stuff from our graveyard. For now, I'm happy to get Sephiroth in play. Can attack first. Sack the Miner, which we can also easily return because Sephiroth does commit a crime when targeting the opponents. And Diviner's great too. Avarice gonna draw 3 at the cost of 3 life. That's quite painful. So this is our turn to make some progress. Diviner. Should not have played land yet in case I milled the Bloodghast actually. Don't think I need to keep any of those. Get an extra color thanks to the Diviner. And there's Bloodghast to maybe get back next turn. Pretty sizable attack, and we can sack the color here. The non-token, so we can do it all over again next turn. Bonus down to 5. And they've got a lot of stuff they need to deal with. And with only 4 mana, there's no sweeper that really gets us. Opponent does have the Kivero, and they did discard a Doomsday Excruciator to hand size, but that's not going to be good enough, so they have to go for Harvester, which is also not good enough. So yeah, next turn we could just get back Color, copy it with Diviner, play a land, get back Bloodghast, and that's a massive attack plus a bunch more Sephiroth triggers on top. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This is a one-lander and not a particularly good one. Take a mulligan. This I can try, still definitely needs a lot of help off the top. Maybe get rid of one removal spell or a land. Pretty likely to draw another. But at least any cheap creature helps us surveil to improve our draws. So I'll actually start with a Gorehound, even though it doesn't attack for as much damage. Crystal Grotto Swamp. And then the Miner we can pretty easily get back with our many removal spells. They will hex the Gorehound, unfortunately. Opponent black-green with an Explorer. Okay. Well, now I wish I had a third land. Just hang on to the Bitter Triumph. Yeah, Annex would immediately drain. So, if I take out the Explorer, they can still activate Mutavaults. So I don't think there's a point in trying to take this out. Had I used Trajectory, then Hex would have been a nice answer to the Mutavaults. So I could try the Diviner, or we can try to stop their demons and then go Trajectory, keep a Bitter Triumph, and Requiting Hex. And then if they tap out for Ritual Chamber, we have a decent answer. Yeah, opponent gets busy with Mutavaults. Happy to take that out. So yeah, opponent did nothing that turn. Can attack, play Diviner perhaps. Yeah, opponent did have a nowhere to run, but happy that they didn't take out the Diviner with it at least. And then maybe one land's okay. Although I'm kind of assuming they're going to remove the Diviner here, so then I'm not going to be able to get the Miner back and copy it. Because otherwise lane 4 would be useful for that. Yeah, let's just bottom. And look for more creatures that we can recur. Annex draws. Found a land anyways. So step 1 attack. Play Gorehound. And then I can Bitter Triumph, pay the 1 to maybe get 2 miners back. It is a pretty aggressive line. But we also get to surveil a bunch with the Gorehounds. They can still activate their Mutavault in response, so they control a demon temporarily. And another Miner's pretty good. Opponent's got a discard to hand size. And we get to smash. Pass a turn. They might have a board wipe. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Because that's also going to exile the miner, so we're not going to get it back. Yeah, that's kind of a turning point here. Now my only hope is that our opponent no longer controls a demon and they die to their own annex. And I do have both Hex and Triumph to make that happen. Although they will also see my hand. So there's no point in them activating the Mutavaults. So they'll fall to 2. I can answer both the demon and the Mutavault on the following turn. So yeah, it's going to be a close one. Opponent goes for it anyway. And the hasty Bloodghast to steal it here. Well, that was a satisfying end to this game. And we get to rank up here as well. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a keepable hand. Hoping to get value with Miner and Diviner. And we have some interaction for other creature decks at least. Also great ways to commit crimes to get the Miner back. But having early pressure is important. Facing red-white aggro, okay. So Miner attacks. And then I can wait on my removal. Gaining life with Blight could also be useful against a burn deck. Our opponent just moves to attackers with a headliner. I think I let them. It's not the scariest creature. It is a Jeskai deck. Possible they can flash in some tokens end of turn. Or they're just keeping up removal for my 3-drop. I'll just take my turn. Start by attacking. And then, yeah, I'm somewhat hesitant to tap out for Diviner into open mana. Can just use a trajectory for now. Take out Headliner and take it from there. I see, Sentry. So definitely more of an aggro deck. Could hex it. And a Helping Hand to get the Headliner back. Interesting, so could also be running Helping Hand with Oculus, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, we'll just hex the Sentry. They can keep the Headliner for now. And then Diviner before playing land in case I Surveil Bloodghast. Which I did, perfect. And then now double Bloodghast is pretty sweet. Attack. Of course, Bloodghast lacking haste at the moment. And then I don't mind a trajectory. And the Storm Spinner is next. And a Helping Hand to get the Sentry back. Okay, but better Triumph can still clear Uharis. And then we would be getting in for 9 damage. Opponent can gain 2 on the way back. Versus can just attack with Miner Diviner. I guess I can send in the non-token Bloodghast as well. And I think this is my preferred outcome. Get to play Gorehound, Triumph the Lifelinker, and get 2 miners back thanks to the Diviner, while surveilling with a Gorehound, which can keep another Diviner on top. Alright, opponent needs to deal 15 damage pretty much. And they cannot do it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a functional hand, just missing kind of a Gorehound to go with Moonshadow. And we're out of removal. So it does have some weaknesses for sure. But I'll try it. Start with Miner since we're not growing Moonshadow right away. Our opponent on some sort of multicolor deck. Melded Moxite, I see Dinosaur Reanimator. Yeah, there's a Voltborn Tyrant. Drew some removal, although if our opponent's got the combo here next turn, we're gonna be in trouble. Can go Moonshadow plus another Miner, can just play a hasty color, hit for 4. Sure. Just want to apply pressure and hope they don't have the combo. So we're kind of at their mercy. They could just reanimate the Tyrants, but they could also have the Swamp Vision to get them back all at once. And our draws have not been all that great considering. Could always Bitter Triumph discard a card as an additional cost to get one of these in the graveyard. Can still do that with Bloodghast. Alright, it's just a Zombify, so it could have been worse. And then now, don't really want a Bitter Triumph Tyrant because it just comes back in the form of a token. So we kind of just want to go wide, meaning this turn it could go Moonshadow, play another Miner. Bloodghast doesn't have haste yet. Or I can tap out for Diviner but not get any value just yet. Let's go Moonshadow. And then just attack. Guess I'll play the Bloodghast. Possible they have another Zombify for a second Tyrant. Nope, now they have the Swamp Vision. Getting back our Miner as well. At least this one goes away end of turn and doesn't leave behind a token. But it also got rid of our Miner. Okay, so opponent's at 14 now. Might be a good turn for Diviner before attacking to grow Moonshadow. And keep a Sephiroth on top. Attack all out. So no creatures in graveyard. They're far from hard casting something game winning, although they could have the Hatcher at 5 mana. Although Lattice into another Swamp Vision could still work if they can discard a Galta especially. But nope, opponent just discarding a land. Better Triumph the Moonshadow, discarding Galta now. And another Moxite. So can I deal 7 damage next turn? It seems feasible. If I just get back the color, we get a copy, so then we should have lethal. Alright, so I was expecting our opponent to combo off a little bit harder, but it worked out in the end. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a promising hand. Some early removal, so especially good against other creature decks, can discard Bloodghast to Bitter Triumph, and hopefully get a copy back with a Diviner. But we do need to hit a third land as well. Facing blue-white. So probably not the matchup to draw a bunch of removal. Opponent surveils again. Alright, I guess we'll try Diviner anyways. While it doesn't get countered. Gorehound is not exceptional here. Could keep the land. If our opponent presents a creature, I can discard Bloodghast, get back and make a copy. But that doesn't seem very realistic in this matchup. It is Jeskai and a stock up. So next turn we can expect a Sweeper. Don't have the best follow-up other than trying to get back Bloodghast. So I'll definitely keep land in hand. Could technically take out our own creatures as well, just to make a copy with a Diviner. But Bloodghast wouldn't have haste yet. Opponent passes. Let's go ahead and attack. Opponent's going to consult without kicker, so might also have a lightning helix for the Diviner. Fire magic dealing 1 to each creature. Fair enough. So I'll play Moonshadow and pass. Opponent is at 10 now, so Bloodghast would have haste. But I don't want to get them back now if our opponent's going to play a board wipe. Ultima, yep. Alright, Sephiroth wasn't bad. So get back double Bloodghast. Attack. And then Sephiroth second main. Find a Hex. Could consider another removal spell, but I can now also Hex the Bloodghast at instant speed to trigger Sephiroth. And I don't have a land yet to get them back. So I'll be patient. No way Sephiroth survives here. Another Ultima. So, at that point I don't hate Hex my Bloodghasts. Just to trigger Sephiroth, otherwise it's not going to trigger on the way out. So we want to target the Bloodghast and then Blight onto Sephiroth. And then now land would be lethal. Minor. Can cast it. Now we are getting into Jeskai Revelation territory. Ugin can also gain life. I guess we want to destroy the Planeswalker instead of destroying the Minor. Yep, so now Bloodghast is no longer lethal. We will pay 3. Find another Minor. So yeah, we had a small window where we could have just top-decked a land for the win. Now things might be slipping away. Consult with kicker. Although yeah, Jeskai Control can have a hard time exiling things for good. So then our recursive threats can eventually get there. Never been so excited to draw a land. Another fire magic, of course, would hurt. Flanker, wow, I'm surprised they didn't flash this in sooner to exile our graveyard. Maybe a missed opportunity. Or they were too focused on gaining life. I'll take it. Trajectory on Bloodghast doesn't count as a crime. Have to target an opposing creature. I see opponent had a Star Cage all along to exile them. And a stock up to refuel. Well, there's no way we were getting those back now. So yeah, it's going to be tough to get those last 5 points of damage in. If we had our land with an activated ability, at least we would be making some tokens, but now a Rest in Peace as well. It's going to completely shut down any graveyard synergy. And now I'm not so happy to draw land. Alright, so this game seems pretty much over. Unless our opponent's holding absolutely nothing and I just draw a random creature here to start beating down. But I highly doubt that's the case. Opponent using this Dark Age, don't see that very often. But that did nothing because, I guess, of a Rest in Peace. Now High Noon can also deal 5 damage. Drew Sephiroth. Is there a point in playing it? They can destroy it with High Noon. And with Rest in Peace, it's also not even going to trigger off other creatures dying. So I may as well. Maybe should have played land to play around No More Lies. Now that Bloodcast is gone. Alright, I played my 3 mana 3/3. What's your move? Yeah, honestly think drawing a land that makes 1/1s is going to be our best draw at this point. Opponent makes some monks. Do have answers, but we'll see here. Helix goes face, trigger prowess. Makes it less likely that they can save a monk from a trajectory. Alright, I mean, I guess we'll play Sephiroth again. There is a High Noon in place, so cannot double spell. Opponent had a counter, copy the monk, which I cannot remove in response, sadly. Could still bitter triumph. At this point, discarding a land. Opponent cashing in High Noon. Helix face. So I think we're dead. And another Helix. Alright. GG's. Yeah, we got close. There was, again, that one turn where we could have drawn a land for Bloodghasts and dealt the last 4 points. So very fine margins here. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with keepable hands, missing removal, so there are matchups where we're gonna need those. For now, start with Miner, turn to Color. Don't have the Gorehound to grow Moonshadow, and we're up against mono-green Landfall. So it's gonna be a tougher matchup for sure. I think Moonshadow Warp Color's not unreasonable. And then next turn Sephiroth could sack the Miner. Promising Vein can still tap for mana. Possible they have a protection spell up here, since we did draw the Hex. Yeah, I think Sephiroth makes the most sense. Sack Miner, next turn we can pretty easily get it back. And for now, Moonshadow has a safe attack. Opponent just sacking the Vein after all. Another Chocobo. And another fetch land, although Passage is also still tapped at the moment. Doesn't seem like they're holding a Snakeskin Veil necessarily. So, what sequencing do we like? Can play the Bloodghast, sacrifice that to Sephiroth. And then still Hex. Opponent takes 6, falls to 5. Maybe they have a fight spell for Sephiroth. But nope, opponent is out of answers and scoops it up. I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a removal-heavy draw. So no early pressure, nothing to sack to Sephiroth. But against creature decks, we have some good tools. So I'm willing to give it a try. Doesn't take much to make this hand functional. Something like Forsaken Miner would be excellent. Facing the mono-white aura deck, so definitely a good matchup to draw a bunch of removal. Still start with a Bloodghast. Can maybe sack it to Sephiroth next turn. And then keep getting it back for additional value. Although it's possible they can exile it with a Seam Rip. Yep. Alright, so no sacking for Sephiroth. Gonna wait for them to make their Survivor a bit bigger. Alright, now Trajectory, of course, can't take it out anymore. Also have to watch out for Survivor exiling relevant things from our graveyard. So I could still try Sephiroth if the plan is to Bitter Triumph Survivor anyway. Next turn I could even double Bitter Triumph. And just get the ball rolling here. But I'm certainly gonna need some help off the top. Feather of Flight, okay. Opponent moving all in on the Survivor. I'll land the draw. So I'll just Trajectory, Scavenger, Bitter Triumph, Survivor. I think still paying 3 life. Can make up for it with Sephiroth. But yeah, finding something to sacrifice would be pretty great. Another Sephiroth. But of course, if we play Sephiroth, we're not going to get a chance to sacrifice it. We would get a death trigger, but I don't think that's worth it here. Also have to watch out for a Shard Mage's Rescue. Ethereal Armor, okay. I think I just discard a card now. Alright, I'll sack a Gorehound. Could have considered holding a land as well. Probably hold this one for future Bloodghasts. Another Weaver. And Trajectory can once again try and clear a path. If we had our own utility land, we could have been pumping out some 1/1s. But yeah, opponent's down to 3. So it all comes down to this top deck. Just a land. And now Bloodghast will have haste. And our opponent scoops it up. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a functional hand, just missing some interaction for matchups where that might be more relevant. Start with a Miner. Hope to draw Gorehound, perhaps. Opponent blue-black. At least we'll get to curve out nicely. Still favoring double Moonshadow. And then sacking Miner next turn can grow both. That plan from our opponents. So can attack first and hit for 4 and then play Sephiroth, because if they are keeping up Requiting Hex, I would rather them taking out a 1/1 Moonshadow than a 2/2. So So it's the same damage, but it's spread out a little bit better if we attack first. And then now we can sack the miner. They might take out a Moonshadow. But now that would also trigger Sephiroth an additional time. Yep. So yeah, they maybe should have cast that in response to Sephiroth entering. Ideally we can keep Sephiroth in play a bit longer. But bonus got a Bitter Triumph, discarding Doomsday Excruciator, which next turn they could get back. So no way to commit a crime this turn since we lost Sephiroth. But I can just cast a color and still have a Bitter Triumph available. Bonus still at 6, facing 6 damage. I guess there was an argument for warping, so I could keep up an extra mana for Bitter Triumph, get back Miner end of turn. Maybe they're looking at Kivero, copy Sephiroth. And by discarding a Swamp with Bitter Triumph, we can also grow Moonshadow once again. Alright, opponent turns Kivero into Sephiroth. So that's gone. May as well untap first. And then Bitter Triumph, discard a card, take out Kivero / Sephiroth, and pay the 1 to return Miner. And our opponent scoops it up. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. Hand is functional. May need to find some removal spells, but with the Surveil we can dig for them. Facing blue-white, looks like control. Alright, Moonshadow's pretty good with double Gorehounds. Jeskai. So definitely a turn where I want to double spell. Go Gorehound into Moonshadow. And then we wouldn't mind keeping a land on top. Don't want to draw removal spells in this matchup. Opponent needing to consult to hit a land drop. Presumably. And they found an untapped Steam Vents. So this is probably for Spell Snare if I had to guess. So, can go for a 3-drop. Diviner maybe has the highest upside for now. Look for something that we can sacrifice with Sephiroth. And then definitely 1 land can go. Do I want to draw land 4? Not necessarily. Given that they missed a land last turn, I'm not expecting White Source into Day of Judgment, but they could have the Day of Judgment in hand already. Alright, they hit land 4, but it's not a second White Source. Their opponent's gonna tap out for a stock up, keep up Spell Snare. If they drew the village, I might have cast a stock up first in case you draw another tapped shock land, since life total matters. But maybe they're still hoping to convert that Spell Snare. I guess we just attack. And then can play Sephiroth. Sack Gorehound. And yeah, opponent scoops it up, they're gonna get drained, and even if they wipe the board, unless it's with an Ultima, they would still die, because Ultima of course would prevent the Sephiroth triggers from going off. So we got to see this monoblack aggro sacrifice deck in action, and yeah, I'm quite pleased with all the synergies at play. We've got Gorehound to keep growing the Moonshadow, Gorehound also great to fill the graveyard to find all these recursive threats, and then our top-end creatures, Sephiroth has plenty of things to sacrifice and draw more cards, and then the Diviner can make some hasty copies of some of our creatures as well, so that's another great way to end the game. So quite pleased with the deck. At the same time, we also have enough removal where we can keep up with green decks so we don't get run over by the first Badger Mole cub that shows up, so that's another important quality for a standard deck to have. But at the same time, we might also end up keeping a hand with a bunch of creature removal against a control deck, and then we might regret including 12 removal spells, since those don't tend to be very effective against control. So yeah, there's always a bit of a push and pull, but depending on the metagame, you can always include a few more threats and maybe cut some of your removal spells if you feel like that's necessary. Another excellent 3-drop that I considered and that you could definitely play in this deck is Corpses of the Lost to give your skeletons haste and 1 additional power, and then that's also the type of card that you can keep picking back up over and over, so that's another card that shines against more controlling strategies. But yeah, for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.